to Wednesday Debate Live. Ambassador Fahmy, as we can see, Egypt's regional role, a very important role in order to preserve the national security and stability of the Arab world as a whole. And Egypt has a natural ability, as we say, to lead the region towards foreign policy goals of stability. And this stems not only from the country's geopolitical location, but definitely also from its notable and historic role throughout. Yes.
Yes, Egypt as a pivotal country in its region and in the global politics, particularly recently with the new republic, has been aggressively pursuing its role globally with all regions, covering all aspects of national security, military, economic and others. And I think all these visits on the level of heads of state, whether President Fattah is visiting abroad or world leaders coming here, is a reflection of this vibrant, new, evolving soul and awakening of Egypt to take its place in the world and in history as it deserves to after a little bit of hibernation. So I think we should all be very proud of Egypt's foreign policy under its president and the current awakenings which we are experiencing globally with all regions of the world for different aspects of our national security.
Yes, definitely a very important visit by the President to the Emirates today, and reading together the fruits of this important visit, Ambassador. Today, as in the glory days of the Pan-Arab nationalism, the Egyptian political leadership is helping in this inspiration of a new generation of Arabs to action. We've seen this, and in light of your experience at the United Nations, Ambassador, very important also how Egypt had supported Africa, the fruits of the chairmanship of Egypt of the African Union and more.
Yes, actually, Egypt during its chairmanship of the African Union played a very important role in pushing the development agenda for Africa forward and in projecting Egypt and linking it back very strongly to its continent, as well as its all the other aspects and all other regions of the world. As I said, Egyptian foreign policy has been quite active in the last few years in restoring Egypt's position in the world and global politics in the interest of and in complementing the domestic agenda in rebuilding the country and having the new republic on very strong basis.
Yes, while we are talking from your words, Ambassador, concerning the new republic, we are having a foreign policy today that is up to the features of the new republic. Just like priorities, alliances and options of foreign policy for any country changes over time, likewise Egypt has also changed over time between the East and the West. From the perspectives of a veteran diplomat today, Ambassador Hazem Fahmy, Egypt's foreign policy and lots of achievements throughout the past 7 years under the leadership of President Sisi, Ambassador, on more than one front.
Yes. Actually, one of the great benefits that I personally felt, and I think many Egyptians did after the 30th of June revolution, is Egypt was diversifying all its foreign partners in a big way. And not depending on one or two regions of the world. And I think that was extremely important. It reduces your vulnerability and increases your exposure and increases the capacity of your country to achieve its potential, whether domestically or whether expanding markets or whether having good ties and good relations with everybody. There is always something to benefit from all other regions of the world. And I think that diversification and expansion worldwide has been very helpful and beneficial for also our domestic efforts in reviving our economy and our development process towards levels that frankly has been unseen for decades, if not for much more than that.
Yeah.
Probably, I used to say when I was abroad that Egypt, probably its most aggressive reform awakenings were probably during Muhammad Ali in the modern times, and maybe during President Nasser. But since then, probably nothing has been on the scale of what's happening today in Egypt. And I think we should all be very proud of that. And we hope that also it revives in the right direction as it is right now towards much higher grounds, and the sky is the limit of what we can achieve.
Yes, the sky is the limit of what we can achieve. And many prospects of cooperation also between Egypt and different partners in a sense of partnership and success with a diversified foreign policy, with Egypt being open to the whole world, as His Excellency has mentioned, from the United Arab Emirates and to South Korea. We'll be reading more about the fruits of the visit of President Moon of South Korea to Egypt, and also know more about the successful partnership between Egypt and South Korea from Ambassador Fahmy. Short break, we'll be back. From the United Arab Emirates to South Korea in Eastern Asia, and Egypt's foreign policy opens continuous lines of communication, managing to chart strong relations. Last Thursday, President Sisi received South Korean President Moon Jae-in at Al-Ittihadiyya Palace, where the two leaders had already held bilateral talks that were followed by signing several memorandums of understanding related to the developmental cooperation, a history-making visit by President Moon of South Korea to Egypt, the first in 16 years, Ambassador.
Yes, the first in 16 years for a Korean president, yes. It was timely and was very fruitful, and it was preceded by a visit of President Fattah al-Sisi to South Korea in 2016, and I think that visit also built great momentum for a lot of things that happened in this return visit from President Moon Jae-in of South Korea.
Yes.
And I think our newfound partnership with a very important global player like South Korea is extremely important for both countries and extremely beneficial as well in so many areas, as the visit reflected in that regard.
Yes, a very important visit. His Excellency, South Korea's ambassador to Cairo, Hong Jin-wook, had stated that President Moon's visit to Egypt was, of course, among the Middle Eastern trip that included Saudi Arabia, included also the Emirates. It was a very important and a significantly meaningful visit for Egypt. We have seen the sense of cooperation. We have seen the sense of that link and bond that binds Egypt and South Korea. And since the historic partnership that has been inked at the presidential visit of President Sisi back in 2016, definitely we took relations to new levels, Ambassador.
Yes. You know, South Korea is a very unique country and is a very admirable experience. In the 1960s, it was like the second most poor country in the world. And now they have reached new heights. They have reached a level of national income per capita exceeding $30,000 per person, which is a huge jump by all means, and only reflects a mature industrialist society. In a post-COVID world, there is also a big concentration from everybody on the new technologies to cope with the new norm after COVID. So the green technologies are extremely important in that regard. Korea is having what is called the new Green Deal. And there's also the digital technology and the digital transformation going into the fourth industrial revolution. We are very lucky to have a partner like Korea who are on the cutting edge of all these new sophisticated technologies, with an open arm also to partner with a country like Egypt with all the benefits they would get with exposure to markets like in Africa and the Middle East and Europe and so on via Egypt's network of free trade areas. And also we are kind of rediscovering each other in a very nice way, and definitely presidential visits are the highest political statement and political commitment you can make between two countries. So in this regard, and in all these areas, there are a lot of agreements that have been signed, and a lot of momentum has been built to push this relation to further heights and to have this solid partnership. Also, it comes against a backdrop of heightened geostrategic rivalry between the world's two largest economies.
Yeah.
And Korea stands out as a neutral and trusted partner in all this, and a safe partner to have. And also Egypt has stands strongly as a good alternative to other vulnerable markets and investment places as a partner for Korea. So I think we have a lot to gain from each other in this partnership, and I think the spirit is very good on both sides, as was reflected by the recent visit of President Moon Jae-in. Just a quick remark, as you mentioned, Ambassador Hong, we are lucky to have a very fine also Korean diplomat being in Egypt here. He played a very instrumental role in pushing relations as well to greater heights. Before coming here, he was Director General for Middle East and Africa, and he played a very pivotal role also in helping the relations of Korea with Africa, the Middle East, and particularly with Egypt.
He is, His Excellency Ambassador Hong also has lots of fans in Egypt.
Yes.
And
he's a very talented and resourceful man. He's a very good artist as well.
We were really lucky. Yeah. We were really lucky to have an interview also with His Excellency Ambassador Hong, and meeting him on several occasions. And recently there was at the embassy, at the Korean embassy in Cairo, a press conference before the presidential visit where His Excellency has announced more concerning the procedures and all that is going to take place during the presidential visit. And he was very much proud to refer to the fact that he appoints himself as the cultural ambassador of Egypt to South Korea. So that, it was great to hear that. Ambassador, during his bilateral meeting with South Korean President Moon, President Sisi affirmed the stability of Libya. So both sides also saw eye to eye vis-a-vis the political developments and the Libyan file, which is considered to be a matter of national security for Egypt.
Yeah. On the Korean side, Korea had very big business in many of the countries in the region, particularly the Gulf countries, and in Libya as well. They had major work in what was called the Great River, and they had some other business in building some power factories and water desalination and so on. So Egypt is a particular concern for business interest for South Korea. And of course, Egypt is a very key country in North Africa, and of course, Libya is at the heart of our national security. So there is kind of mutual agreement and understanding of the necessity to stabilize Libya and hopefully to make it move into the right direction, right course towards development and towards a meaningful development that's in the interest of the Libyan people as well as its neighbors. So of course, this was one of the issues that was touched by both presidents in terms of the mutual interest for both parties to stabilize not only Libya but the region. And President Moon Jae-in made it very clear that how they appreciate the role of Egypt as a stabilizing factor in the Middle East, not only through its neighbors but in the wider Middle East as well, and of course as an important regional power serving the interest of peace and security worldwide as well.
Yes. Well, it was a very important visit, the visit of South Korea's president to Egypt on the heels of this important visit, President Moon's visit to Egypt last week. Cairo and Seoul were busy expanding this sense of partnership and working on a host of economic cooperation agreements. So we talked also business during President Moon, taking our economic relations into new levels.
Yes, business featured very highly on that. There were a few deals that were struck as well. For example, Hyundai Rotem, they are a group of companies that they are, one of their specialty is rail cars, and they are going to manufacture rail cars for the metro line and for Egypt with a high local component. And there was also Korea is going to help in indigenizing the technology for electric vehicle manufacturing in Egypt. A Myeongshin company, and the CEO was here as well. And the government is supporting that through, it has very big two research and development agencies working in the area of car manufacturing. So they're going to support both the Korean company and Egypt to indigenize this electric vehicle manufacturing. And of course, this is under a wider interest and focus by President Fattah al-Sisi to have Egypt go in the green direction and to deal with the problem of climate change, especially that Egypt is hosting the Conference of the Parties 27th this November in Sharm el-Sheikh, and which is an event that it is actually the most attended global event by the United Nations ever, and we expect to have around 40,000 participants. And I think many more people than those who attended in Glasgow will be in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it attracts the interest of the whole world. As I mentioned, South Korea is a leading country in green technology, and that's why also climate change is at the center of their interest. And that's one of the areas that they are keen also to cooperate with Egypt in, whether in having the green technology being transferred to Egypt, or whether with Egypt's leading role on the global agenda, like hosting the COP27 conference in that regard.
Yes, during the visit, the president and his South Korean counterpart agreed also to sign the free trade agreement, and this is going to be a real turning point, isn't it, Ambassador?
Yes, actually it is the signing of a feasibility study on having a free trade agreement between both sides, and yes, definitely, of course, it will have a huge impact for attracting Korean investments and industries to Egypt, and also giving the chance for Egypt to have access to other markets, as well as Korea to access Egypt's network of free trade area with other countries. So definitely free trade areas are usually a good thing, and they're usually beneficial to both sides, and we hope that particularly it will lead to a major attraction of Korean investments in Egypt as well.
Yes, definitely talking about our relations with South Korea is really interesting, a very important partnership that binds both countries, Egypt and South Korea. We're really honored tonight to have with us our distinctive guest, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Hazem Fahmy, our returning ambassador from South Korea. We'll be back. We're still on talking more about the different areas of cooperation in more than one field, in the cultural field, in the field of tourism, and more to come. Short break. We'll be back. It was also during the visit a chance for the Korean president and the First Lady to know more about the different initiatives undertaken by Egypt that had changed the face of life in the country, Ambassador, like the Decent Life Initiative and that important presidential initiative aiming to improve the quality of life of Egyptians, especially in the rural areas in Upper Egypt. Ambassador Bassam Radi, presidential spokesman, said that South Korea may also take part in the presidential Decent Life Initiative.
I'm not surprised to hear that, because South Korea, one of the things they excel in is all aspects of infrastructure, whether it's energy, whether it's transportation, whether it's water desalination, you name it. I mean, they're very good in that. So I think there is a lot to benefit from their expertise in that area and to partner with them. And particularly President Moon Jae-in is also very conscious about the issue of inequalities and dealing with it. And of course, the Decent Right Initiative is one of those very important breakthroughs to reduce inequalities and improve the status of people who are less fortunate. So I think this is also something that's quite fitting with the agenda of the Korean president as well. So I'm not surprised that have touched on this issue, and that they are going to be partners for Egypt in that regard as well. Yeah.
Yes, more than one achievement actually during that important visit. During his meeting with the with his South Korean counterpart, President Moon, President Sisi said that he discussed opportunities for the potential partnership between the Egyptian companies operating in Africa as well as the Korean companies. So definitely it was a chance to see eye to eye vis-a-vis the sense of partnership and cooperation in Africa.
Yes, of course. In particular, that as I mentioned, that due to the global circumstances, Korea is looking to diversify its markets, and definitely Africa is a rising market for, particularly after the signing of the Continental Free Trade Agreement under the chairmanship of the Egypt to the African Union. I think this is a major move in the development of Africa and taking it to a higher level. And I think the dynamics that this free trade area will create in terms of deepening investment and trade and infrastructure projects will create a lot of opportunities for business partners like South Korea to benefit a lot, and for Africa as a whole to benefit from the expertise and technological prowess of a country like South Korea in this regard. Which is very interesting because many of the world leading economies are heavily involved in Africa, but I think there is still a very good role for Korea to be filled. And Korea also has a very big advantage over most of the partners for Africa, is that till recently Korea itself was a developing country. So that increases their sense of awareness and sympathy and understanding of the problems of developing countries more than the other traditional partners who are already very well developed and has not been in this phase for a very long time. So I think that also adds a lot to Korea and its importance in being involved in African market and African projects in general. And Egypt is a natural candidate to be a springboard for Korean business and for Korean companies to deal with the African market as well.
Yes, we were really glad also that culture and soft power was there on the agenda. A memorandum of understanding was there signed between the Korean Cultural Heritage Administration and its Egyptian counterpart, and the Supreme Council, of course, of Antiquities. So we're glad this is really good news.
Yes, there are several aspects of cooperation in this regard. Of course, like many countries, I mean, whenever you meet any Korean, the first thing when they learn about civilization, Egypt always comes first since they are in primary school. But also there is great interest to cooperate with Egypt in terms of digitalizing some of our archives and antiquities. And I've been honored to connect our Ministry of Antiquities as well with the Korean National Museum.
Yes, with Waziri here.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are currently discussing to have a permanent exhibition or a long-term exhibition of Egyptian antiquities in the Korean National Museum. They have had two experiences before. One of them was most recently where they had a collection on loan from the Brooklyn Museum, which was all pharaonic stuff, and it was the most visited section of the National Museum. So now, hopefully now they have some collection from Egypt as well for a longer time that hopefully will also attract a lot of Koreans. And information that many people do not know, Korea is a country of 52 million people. Before COVID, the annual rate of tourism, people going out of Korea for tourism, was 27 million. That's more than half the population. So it's a very touristic nation, and I think Egypt should capture a large portion of this market, which we did not. In our heydays before the 2011 revolution, the maximum number we reached was around 20 to 30,000 Korean tourists, and I think we need to have much more of that market. It's a very lucrative market with a great ambition to travel worldwide, so I think this is a very big untapped resource and potential for cooperation between both countries in that regard.
Yes, as Your Excellency has mentioned, Ambassador Hazem, that the sky is the limit in future prospects of cooperation with South Korea. A lot has been